theme song. Welcome to the Photo Flunky Show, episode 135. Today we're going to be asking the question, is Nikon's mirrorless camera driving the internet insane? Hi, welcome to the Photo Flunky Show. My name is William Beem.
My name is Lee Beem.
And we help photographers become better visual storytellers so they can take better photos to share, sell, and remember. All right, this whole thing with Nikon's new mirrorless cameras is really just entertaining for me. But, some of the questions that are coming out of this and that we want to talk about, are the new Nikon mirrorless cameras professional? And are these going to be Sony killer cameras?
I love that one.
That's one of my favorites. And honestly, what does this mean for Nikon DSLR cameras? Those are some of the takeaways that we want to try and answer during this episode. And before we get to that, I just want to let you know that show notes is going to be available at williambeem.com/episode 135. All right, let's get into the meat of the show. And what I want to tell you is this show is not about Nikon's new cameras.
No, it really isn't.
This show is about just the general insanity that's come about on the internet because of Nikon's new mirrorless cameras.
Oh, look, the internet didn't need help to go insane. This just might have helped tip them over the edge.
When I look at the announcement from Nikon, everything is kind of what you see these days. Everything is a big launch. There's a little teaser video coming out. There's a lot of rumors. The Nikon rumors site and other rumor sites are just going crazy, trying to anticipate what is it going to be. Is this going to be a real Sony killer? The people who are pro Nikon think this is great. Sony is dead. Everything is going to change because Nikon has a real mirrorless camera coming out this time, not like their old J1 or whatever the previous models were that really, truly bombed.
Oh, this isn't about a brand. This is about a product. Like it or leave it.
And then on the other half of it, you look at the Sony fans and it'll say, oh, Nikon bombed. I mean, should they stop right now? I mean, there was one video I saw that really just asked if Nikon should just admit defeat and hang its head and go away. And I laughed.
But I was like, what difference does it make if you're not shooting with Nikon? Why do you care?
Well, that is something I really don't understand. I bought Nikon not because I'm a Nikon fanboy. When I started with photography years and years ago in film days, I was shooting Olympus. Olympus was a really good brand. They had tennis players and cute models, that were doing commercials for them. Then I thought, okay.
Yeah, that's a good reason to buy into it.
I thought so.
Mm-hmm.
I put my cameras away for a while. When I got back into photography and I had an Olympus, and by that time I had a Minolta, and I thought I need to get a digital camera. And I knew that either Nikon or Canon were the two top brands in photography. Either one would do well for me, but I didn't know which one to pick. I went into a camera store. I held both of them in my hand. I mean, we're talking about models that were kind of entry level.
Yeah.
I liked the way Nikon felt better.
I was the same.
I did not feel that Nikon was superior to Canon. I just simply liked the way it felt. I figured if it's going to be in my hands for a lot of time, I want to be comfortable with it. That was it. I knew Canon was just as good in its own way as Nikon was, but I liked the way the Nikon felt, and I bought my Nikon D70. It was my first DSLR. And I've stayed with Nikon because I bought lenses.
Yes.
And the lenses, it's a system. The camera bodies don't matter.
They really don't. And actually, with my limited knowledge of DSLRs, when I first started entertaining the maybe one day idea, I went into a camera store in the good old days, to pick them up. And it was the same thing. It was going to be Canon or it was going to be Nikon. And the reason that I opted to, I refined my choices down to those two. What really came down to when I want to get accessories or extra lenses, if I really seriously get into photography and I start putting some money out, what is going to give me the broadest scope for options if I want to upgrade, add on, or expand my gear. And those two really had more bases covered than I could ever need. So I kind of figured anything I hadn't thought of yet was probably covered within one of the two brands.
We got lucky that both of us shoot Nikon, and therefore we can trade lenses about.
Yeah.
But other than that, if I'd picked up and said, I like the Canon better, I don't think it would have made a bit of difference for us.
No, it really wouldn't.
I mean, it's just, We are not brand loyal people. We like some brands because we like the products that they create, not necessarily the brand name itself. I buy Apple stuff because I like Apple for the most part. They upset me every once in a while. I imagine they upset other people once in a while.
Yeah.
And you know what? There are times Nikon doesn't do everything exactly the way I'd like to, but overall, I am happier with those cameras. I'm happier with the computers, not my iPhone, than I would be if I had Windows, which I use in other circumstances away from home. And I've never had an Android phone. I don't think I ever will.
No, trust me, I've done it. There's a reason why I don't. But yeah, I mean, the same thing with the Nikon and the Canon. I mean, even now, like years later, I still like the way that Nikon feels, and that's kind of why, you know, if I had nothing and had to start over, I'd still stay with it. Not because I think it's superior, but I like the way it feels. And there are little features that I like about it, which are silly little things, but they've become kind of comfortable to me. When I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago, I was there for work, and basically all the photography gear and the video stuff came out of the trunk, and we're hauling it over to a place where we're going to have to get some, you know, videos and some live things shot. And amongst these things, one of the guys turned around and went, "Oh my goodness, who brought this camera?" He said, "Why this one? Nobody knows how to use it. We've never used it." And it was a Canon DSLR. It took beautiful photos. I said, "Well, give it to me. Let's feel it." But the way it felt kind of reminded me why I prefer my Nikon. Not because there was anything wrong with it, but it just, I don't know. It wasn't a natural feel when I held it.
And you know what? There are people who shoot Canon that absolutely love them, you know, because of the quality of glass that Canon makes, because of the menu system. I remember years ago when I was at a workshop and we were doing some action photography. One of my partners down there said, "I really want to try the autofocus system on this because it's supposed to do a great job, you know, for this kind of panning and the things we were doing." So it had a wonderful autofocus system. People were very, very pleased and happy with their Canon. And that did not take away from me one bit as a Nikon owner.
No, I mean, it's also, I found generally there, especially the entry-level cameras and even lenses are a lot lighter than Nikon's. Now, for me, I prefer something more solid in my hand. For most people, the lighter you can go without reducing quality, the better. So that's actually an upsell for Canon.
So over the past couple of years, Sony has really stepped up its game. They have been coming up with new iterations and models of their mirrorless cameras, and people are really happy with them. They've also got some complaints about them too. I mean, again, nothing is perfect. They really love the eye autofocus. In other words, the autofocus system will track a human eye, and whether your subject is moving back and forth, whatever, it'll lock onto it and do a very good job of making sure the autofocus is right there, which is where you want it. And no other manufacturer has that. On the other hand, mirrorless cameras will suck up batteries like candy.
Yeah, I can tell you from past experience, that's enough for me to sell my camera.
People really love a lot of things about their Sony cameras, and one of the things that they love is that the body itself is lighter weight. But to me, that's offset by the number of batteries you've got to carry around.
It is just a pain in the butt.
So it's something that some people are willing to accept, and they go for it. They've said, yes, it's going to chew up a lot of batteries because you're using an electronic viewfinder instead of an optical viewfinder. It's got to power that viewfinder. But it's not for everybody. It's certainly not for me. I've looked at it. I've looked at Nikon's new mirrorless cameras, and there are features of each one of them that I like. I don't think that's going to be my next move, though.
No, I'm not sold yet either.
It kind of makes me wonder, though, are photographers ever satisfied? There are so many criticisms of Nikon's new cameras, but yet the people that have touched them really seem to like them.
Okay, see, if we didn't have the internet, people would be pretty happy. They'd be getting the latest issue of a photography magazine. They'd be talking to some friends at a photography club. And when people show up in person and start talking things with people who have a common interest, they are far less critical. People will spout their mouths when they've just got a fake picture or they've made up a user handle. It's easy to be whoever you want to be. You can throw things around on the internet. When you have to own what you say, you actually say what you mean.
This is my favorite criticism. It does not have dual card slots, the Nikon Z6 and Z7. And because I'm American, I say Z, not Z. Someone on one of the videos I watched said, the rest of the English-speaking world calls this a Z. Good for them. I'm an American. I call it a Z. Because it doesn't have dual card slots, it is not a professional camera. Now, mind you, if you get a phase 1 medium format, it doesn't have dual card slots either.
Oh,
so apparently
dear.
that's not a professional camera.
Oh, well, then they're in trouble.
Cannot make money with either of these cameras.
No, you better not. So in other words, you're not allowed to sell photos.
No, it's quite impossible.
I mean,
the internet has spoken.
Yeah, well, imagine not having two card slots.
It's kind of like my film days. If I didn't have 2 rolls of film in the camera body at the same time, if I want to go shoot my cousin's wedding, which by the way, I was really horrible at. The fear is if you don't have dual card slots, a wedding, sports event, basically any kind of event, is it happens once. You don't get to recreate the moment. And if your card fails, you really want to have a backup card. I get that. I think that is a wonderful idea. I'm glad that, a lot of cameras do have dual card slots for people who need to do that.
Yeah, but guess what? Sometimes something comes out and it's not marketed to wedding photographers or...
Well, exactly. Not every camera really is going to live or die based on whether or not it has dual card slots. And this is the part that I find really hilarious. All these people on the internet, everybody can have a YouTube channel. So all these talking heads are going to tell you about why this is not a professional camera, that Nikon has just failed utterly. They should just stop now, quit, and die. And yet, Nikon issued an apology that it cannot fulfill the orders fast enough. They are manufacturing 20,000 cameras per month, and yet the demand is higher. So that's a pretty good result, I think, for a camera that's failed and should just curl up and die.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
I think it's hilarious. All right, so a professional camera. Look, if you're a wedding photographer, if you're a concert photographer, you're doing some kind of event where you've got one shot in a lifetime to get the shot.
Yeah, there's no retakes.
There's no retakes. You got to get it. And you don't want to worry about a card failing and then you lose the stuff. I get that. I don't want to go up to a bride and say, you know what? I'm sorry, but all of the photos I took of your wedding crashed on this camera. Mind you, we had a second shooter, or I had another camera on my side. We got some shots, but we didn't get the ones from this camera because the card died. You still don't want to do that. And in a commercial environment, you don't want to do that. The people who hire you as a photographer expect you to produce photographs.
Yeah, and they don't want to have to worry about anything because they're paying you.
Dual cards are an insurance policy. It's the same thing as wearing a seatbelt, but you know what? It's an insurance policy. It's, for some people, this is going to be a deal breaker. And to those people, I say, do not buy this camera. At least not for that kind of purpose.
It's that simple. I mean, really, you want to look at the features of the camera. I would say it's probably fair to say that there's never a camera that's going to come out that is going to check absolutely every box for you. You have to find the ones where the box is not checked are non-deal breakers and where the most important things are checked. Take a look at it, go through the stuff. First of all, find out if it's got the features that you absolutely must have. Look at the would-be nice features and figure out whether this is worth the money. Then go and have a look. And I'd recommend actually going and having a look at review sites where they review the camera without reading the discussion first. Because most of the comments are my entertainment. No matter what the article is that comes out, I mean, the comments are sometimes just hilarious.
It's just everybody wants to sound like an expert. Everybody wants to put their opinion in. And yet not everybody has touched this camera, has taken any photos with this camera, or has really experienced maybe even with a card failure. It does happen. It's very rare to me. I don't recall having a card that's failed on me. Doesn't mean it can't happen. And I get it. It's an insurance policy. In the rare event that this happens, you'd like to have a backup. Not a problem at all. My main camera right now is a Nikon D800. It's a few years old. It's certainly a couple of generations out of date. I didn't even realize that there was a second card slot in there. There's it uses a compact flash card, which is my primary thing that I use. And it also has a small little slot there for an SD card. I've never bothered with it. I didn't even pay attention that it was there.
But
yet I can't make money from this camera because I've never put a card in that slot. So therefore it's almost as if I've been shooting with a single card slot camera.
You better not tell people about all the stuff you've sold.
I've got to issue refunds right away.
Man.
Can you imagine that? Having 2 card slots and not using them.
That is absolutely outrageous.
I think one of the reasons that this is exciting, everybody's been waiting for Nikon and also Canon. This episode is coming out on September 5th, and that is the date that I've been told that Canon should announce its mirrorless camera. They're expecting mirrorless to save the world. It's going it's going to be so much better than a DSLR.
Did they have capes?
They should have capes on these cameras, I think. Unless they were going to go in The Incredibles, then no capes.
No capes. Oh.
Why is mirrorless better than a DSLR?
It's not better, it's different.
Exactly.
Look,
there are features that some mirrorless cameras have that DSLRs do not have, and vice versa. Well, the nice benefit that I get from DSLR is my battery lasts a really long time.
Yes, like all day.
The nice thing about a mirrorless camera is you can have a silent mode. So in other words, if you're in an event, let's say, let's go back to wedding photographers. Some of these wedding venues are just big echo chambers, and there's a silent moment with the bride and groom up front, and whoever is officiating is speaking, and then everybody in the audience hears click, click, click.
Oh, no, I'm a show off. I want my camera to make a noise. I want everyone to see my big, important professional because I get super card slots.
Some people would like to have a silent camera at that moment. They don't want to interrupt what's going on. I don't think this is really this is not an issue at a rock concert, because if they can hear your camera clicking,
it's terrible music.
Something's gone wrong. And I get it also in sports. Like, for example, if you're at a golf tournament, the backswing is, you don't make a sound. Everybody in golf whispers like this. You've got to be very quiet. He's pulling back the iron. He's going to hit it. And then you hear the little whack of the ball. But before that, you hear click and say, oh, you just ruined the whole game.
Do you know where else it would be helpful, though, is like wildlife and bird photography, to have no sound? I guess that would be helpful.
Oh, I don't think so.
Why?
Animals are noisy. You ever go out in the woods, you think it's peaceful and quiet? No, there's all kinds of caterwauling and noises going on.
I think it's so easy to scare animals. If you can keep yourself quiet,
if I go out, help to keep look, I grew up camping. If I go out in the woods and I hear total dead silence, I am in fear for my life.
Yeah, because something's chasing.
Yeah, some predator is around, and apparently I'm the prey because I'm the only one that doesn't know what's going on. So I'm happy to go clicking along out in the woods. If there's total silence out in the woods, I am really in fear.
Okay.
So that's all there is, at least from my point of view. I expect the woods to be kind of loud and noisy, and that's when I'm in my happy place. If I'm in the woods and animals are making noise, then I don't feel there are any predators around stalking me.
Okay, that sounds like it's a survival tactic.
Anyways, mirrorless, I don't really think is better than DSLR. My next camera, whenever I get around to buying it, is very likely going to be a DSLR. I've already got the glass for it, and I know that you can put that on Nikon's mirrorless camera with an adapter, and I think that'll be fine. But my main thing is I really don't need a mirrorless camera. I cannot look at a photograph and tell you what camera took it. I can look at a photograph and say, oh, okay, you used a wide-angle lens, or you used a telephoto lens, or you used a certain aperture because you've got this much, bokeh or depth of field. The lens matters, but you cannot look at a photograph and say, oh, wow, you used a Nikon D5.
No.
It just doesn't work that way. So that kind of tells you how important your camera is. The camera is only important to the photographer because it has features that the photographer wants. So with that in mind, does Nikon really want to kill Sony's mirrorless camera line?
I think that's hilarious. I didn't think Nikon was even thinking about Sony or anyone else for that matter. I mean, they're considering what, the market and what the competition is in terms of standards and, what people want. But other than that, they're not trying to take another business out.
First off, Nikon couldn't take Sony out. Sony is an enormous business. Nikon, in comparison, is very small. If you want to look at the organizational structure of some of these companies, Canon is huge. Not only does it do cameras and scanners, it does copiers and large print systems. It does a number of things. Sony makes movies and audio systems and all sorts of other stuff, but in addition to its camera line. Sony's enormous. It's not going to have any fear of Nikon taking it out. I think Nikon is paying attention to Sony. It wants to compete. This is a new marketplace, and there's an opportunity here. Mm-hmm. And obviously, these cameras are their first, not their last mirrorless cameras.
Yeah, that's another good point.
Do I really need to switch? I mean, suddenly this is, the coming thing. I think that's it. It's the coming thing. It's not necessarily replacing DSLRs at this moment. In the future, it will. I expect that DSLRs will eventually fade away as people move more and more towards mirrorless. They work out battery issues and other things. Mm-hmm. But right now, people were asking, when they announced these mirrorless cameras, does this mean Nikon's not going to announce any more DSLRs? Well, no, they just announced a new DSLR, was it?
Oh, I don't know.
7500 something. I don't remember which name it was. It was one of the entry level DSLR cameras. So Nikon will continue to release DSLR cameras for the foreseeable future. It will eventually add more mirrorless cameras to its line. And I expect that's probably going to be the way it goes for the next 5 to 10 years at least.
Yeah, I don't know. You just got to roll with what is. You're not going to stop being able to get the lenses for your current DSLR if you're happy with it. And
there are new lenses that are coming out specifically for the mirrorless line. And I like something that Nikon did that Sony did not. Both of them have full frame sensors, but Sony's mount is still a crop sensor mount. So that means that there's less room to get light to the sensor than there is in Nikon's new camera line. And I expect Canon will do the same thing. They will also make sure that they have a wider opening or the flange for light to come in to hit the sensor. And that's going to be something that's going to be a real challenge to Sony, because if they have to change their mount, then that means their body of lenses are incompatible.
yeah, then they have to come out with adapters.
Well,
Isn't that fun?
That's the thing. You can't necessarily adapt it in the opposite direction, because if you've got a small hole and then you adapt it to a larger one, you've still got the same problem. So adapters doesn't work. For Sony to try to compete with that aspect of the Nikon mirrorless cameras, they've got to come out not only with a new camera, but a whole new series of lenses to go with it. Ooh, maybe it did kill Sony.
I know, it's all this stuff is just silly. Like, that's just my opinion. I think it's amusing. I haven't really got into any of this or paid much attention except for stuff that kind of comes up that I cannot avoid. But it's amusing to me. I'm just so used to everyone screaming and yelling and jumping up and down about stuff.
You know what? It's the anger.
As soon as it comes out, I'm almost immune to it. It's like, oh, okay. I see all this noise. I think, right, there's a new camera coming out. Okay,
it's the anger of the internet. I mean, it's the way that the people are treating the announcement of Nikon's mirrorless cameras is much like the election cycle the United States went through a couple of years ago.
Why is the internet so angry?
I don't know.
It's not real people.
No, and these are cameras. They're not people even. It's like, Nikon, Canon, Sony. Some people are really saying, yeah, Fuji's going to win it all, while these guys tear each other down. I thought, okay, that's nice. I don't have anything against Fuji, but I don't have any Fuji lenses or investment whatsoever, so it doesn't really matter to me. If I had a new purpose, let's say that I wanted to go in and I really wanted to get into video, I don't know that I would do that with Nikon. Nikon doesn't necessarily have the best reputation for doing video. Canon was certainly much better. Sony has a good reputation with that. And that might be something where you're starting something new. I'm not necessarily switching my photography away from Nikon. Rather, I'm supplementing it with video. Remember in the old days, you had a camcorder.
Yes.
You didn't do anything with your camera because, well, it was film. But I mean, you had a totally separate device.
Yes.
You can now do stuff with your camera that will do video and still photography. But is it the best tool for both?
I have always preferred to have very specific tasks separated, and I use equipment that is designed for that specific task. And I guess it's an old-fashioned thing that maybe is applying less and less right now. But for example, when I was looking for, every time I upgraded my DSLR, I didn't care about the video capabilities on the DSLR, because I wanted my camera to take photos. For video, I had a separate video camera, which is not great, but video is not my main thing. It was still in my better interest to get one thing that did something specific and have my camera for the photos and spend the money on the features of the camera that I wanted. I wasn't going to be sold with the bells and whistles of a separate function. I just like to have something separated for a dedicated purpose. And the other nice thing is that if you are with somebody and you want to do two things at once, if it's all on the same camera, you got to pick.
Some of the problem I heard with Nikon was simply when it was doing video, writing to the card wasn't quite the same as some of the other cameras did. So in other words, you might have a little bit of a lag. The people have complaints about video on Nikon, and I think the new mirrorless cameras are supposed to address some of that. I don't have any experience doing video on my Nikon cameras.
Neither do I.
The only thing I've done video with, besides an iPhone, is we have a little Canon, was it GX7 or G7X Mark II, which I like. It does a nice job. It's lightweight. It's portable. We're not doing serious video like trying to shoot a movie or something like that where we have to have the depth of field and everything. We're just simply out shooting mostly travel video, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So those two little devices work fine for us. We're not into a cinematic video that would require a DSLR or a mirrorless camera that with the select lenses for it. Maybe one day we will. And if we do, I don't know if it will be Nikon. It might be Sony. It might be Canon. Again, that's where we look at what are the capabilities of the tool and do they suit the needs that we want. If this Nikon mirrorless camera doesn't suit your needs, I get it. It might be a disappointment. You were hoping it would be something and then it turns out it's something else. Or you may be on the other way around that, wow, maybe this does something, has a benefit now, like all the autofocus points that are on the back of the Z7. None of my other Nikon cameras have anything like that. It really depends on what you need to do and what you want to do, and pick the right tool for it. Thank you so much for joining us on the Photo Flunky Show. You can find us at williambeam.com/episode 135 for show notes. And if you'd like to subscribe, please go to williambeam.com/iTunes. We would love to have you subscribe. If you're listening on your mobile device, go ahead and subscribe right now. It's fun. You can find this show and many others at our player at photoflunky.com. And also we have links to subscribe on Google Play, Stitcher, and Blueberry. Finally, if you're running Lightroom and it's not performing up to speed, I've got an ebook that'll help you out. It's called Lightroom Classic Performance Hacks. It'll show you what slows Lightroom down and how you can fix it. Just go to williambeam.com/LRHacks. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next week.